Welcome to Unit 3, Lesson 6, Graphing a Line from Slope-Intercept Form. Please write down the learning target and try the do now. So pause this video, write down the learning target, try the do now on your own. Okay, well, I hope you pause the video and that you try the do now on your own before watching this. So the first part of the do now says the slope of the line is, and you have to pick if it's positive, negative, 0, or undefined. So remember, slope tells us how steep a line is, okay, and also tells us if the line is going uphill, downhill, if it's a flat line, or if it's going straight up and down, okay? So this line, if I move from left to right, we read lines from left to right, just like we read words. So I would slide to the right, and as I'm sliding to the right with my pen is also going down, right? So it's going downhill as I move from left to right. So if it's going downhill as we move from left to right, it has a negative slope. And remember, just like we read this sentence from left to right, I can graph a linear equation that is, I read from left to right, I read lines from left to right too. So the next question is, what is the y-intercept? So the y-intercept from our previous lesson is the location where the graph touches this y-axis. So my method is to circle the y, find the y-axis, and then travel down the y-axis until I touch the graph. So this point right here is the y-intercept, and that point is 0, 3. So from the origin, I do not move left or right, so I stay put, 0. But I do have to move 3 units up, which is the second coordinate, 3. Okay, so x, y, that's my ordered pair. And the y-intercept of the graph is the y-coordinate of that point. So the y-intercept is 3. So the y-intercept, I'll write the point, is 0, 3. Okay, that's our do now. Pause the video if you need to catch up on the notes, and then play it when you're done. So the notes for today, right here. So what is slope-intercept form? Okay, so we have quite a bit of notes. We'll start here. So the slope of a line is the measure of the steepness of a line on a graph. We always want to write slope as a fraction in slope-intercept form. The slope tells us how to move from one point to the next point on a linear graph. So it's like a set of directions. It tells us how to get from one point to the next. Slope is always represented by the letter m, which stands for movement. It tells us how we move from one point to the next on the line. The y-intercept is the y-coordinate of the point where the graph of a line crosses the y-axis. So it's the y-coordinate only. The y-intercept is represented by the letter b, which means begin. Okay? So whenever we graph a line that's in slope-intercept form, we begin with the y-intercept, and then we use the slope to move to other points. So let's take a look what slope-intercept form is. Again, pause the video if you need to catch up with the notes. So I have stuff underneath this. Okay. So this equation is the general form of slope-intercept form. Okay, y equals mx plus b. You're going to have to know this from now until you stop studying math. Y equals mx plus b. So this letter m that has x attached to it, okay, this represents the slope of a line. Okay, so the number in the linear equation that has x attached to it, we call that the coefficient of x, slope is the coefficient of x, is the number that tells us the slope of the line, how steep the line is. The number that does not have x to attach to it, it's the constant, we call it, is the y-intercept. This is where we begin. We begin with this number on the graph. We use this number, the slope, to travel on the graph. So pause the video, take these notes quickly so you have them, and then we're going to try the first question. Okay. So, question number 1. So, slope-intercept form of a line is y equals mx plus b. This is the slope-intercept form. Okay, so when I'm given a linear equation like this one, I need to recognize which number is the slope, which number is the y-intercept. So the slope of the line is always the number that has x attached to it. So we said m was the slope. It tells us what the movement, okay? So 1/2 is a number that's attached, that has x attached to it. This is the slope number, okay? So I'm going to write that here under where the slope is, right? That's the slope, 1/2. And the other number, this -2, does not have x attached to it. This number is the y-intercept. This is where I'm going to begin my graphing. So I'm just going to label this here, b equals -2. Okay. And now I'm going to write out my directions. So before I start graphing, these two numbers are directions that they tell me how to create the line. I just have to understand how to interpret them. So the y-intercept tells us where to begin the graph. So I'm begin my graph at the point 0, -2. The y-intercept is the y-coordinate of the location where the line crosses the y-axis. Then I'm going to use these directions to find other points. So the top number tells me if I'm going to move up or down. So the top number in the fraction tells me if I'm moving up or down. I go up if the top number is positive. I go down if the top number is negative. So this is a positive 1. I'm going to move 1 unit up. The bottom number in the fraction tells me if I'm going to go left or right. I'm going to go right if the bottom number is positive. I'm going to go left if the bottom number is negative. Okay. So I'm going to move, this is a positive 2. I'm going to move 2 units to the right. Then I'm going to repeat this pattern until I run it off of the graph paper. So I'm going to start at 0, -2. Let me label my x and y axis. Okay, so to plot this point, I go to the origin. I'm going to move 0 units to the left or to the right, so I stay put. And then I'm going to move 2 units down. That's my y-intercept. That's where I start. I'm going to give that a quick little yellow highlighter. I started at this point. That's my beginning. And now I'm going to follow these directions to get to the next point. So I'm going to move 1 unit up and 2 units to the right. So from this y-intercept, I'm going to move 1 unit up and then 2 units to the right. Then I place a point. Now, I'm going to keep following that pattern until I can't go on the graph paper anymore. So I'm going to go 1 unit up, 2 units to the right. 1 unit up, and then 2 units to the right, and I place my next point. If I go 1 unit up and then 2 units to the right, I ran off the graph paper, so I'm just going to stop. These 4 points create a straight line. So I'm going to grab a ruler or a straight edge. And whenever I draw a line, you always draw the line on the graph paper to the ends of the graph paper. Okay. So go to both ends. And then we always label the line with the equation. So the equation was y equals 1/2 x minus 2. Just write it here, y equals 1/2 x minus 2. So that's the graph of my line. The line had a positive slope, so it should be going uphill. It is. Okay. So let's try another one. So I'm gonna slide up here. Pause the video if you need more time. Remember, pause the video and copy what you need to. Okay. Question number 2. Y equals negative 2/3 x plus 5. So I'm gonna write y equals mx plus b below this. I'm just gonna box this off. Okay, m stands for the movement or the slope of the line. M is attached to x. So the slope of this line is negative 2/3. Now this is very important. Please pay attention to this part. This negative is in front of the fraction. All right. When we write the slope, this negative sign, always put it with the top number. Put it with the top number. The bottom number is just going to stay positive. Okay? Do not put this negative sign in the top and in the bottom of the fraction. Do not put it in the numerator and the denominator. You're going to change the sign of the fraction. You're going to change this to a positive number if you do that. Okay? The other number where we begin with the y-intercept, b for begin, is positive 5. So the y-intercept b equals 5. We're beginning the graph at 0, 5. I'm going to label my x and y axis. I'm going to start at the origin. I'm going to go to this point 0, 5. The x coordinate is 0, so I'm not going to move left or right. I stay put. The y coordinate is 5, so we move up 5 spaces on the y axis. This is my y-intercept. This is where the graph of the line is going to start. Now I'm going to follow my instructions. So again, when we have slope, the top number in the slope tells us if we are going up or down. Right? If it's a positive number, you go up. If it's a negative number, you go down. The bottom number, if it's positive, you go to the right. If it's negative, you go to the left. Okay. So we have negative 2 in the top of the fraction, or the numerator of the fraction. Negative 2, you're going to go 2 units down. Notice we're going down in this fraction first. The first one we went up. It's because it's a negative 2. And then we have positive 3 in the denominator. So we're going to move 3 units to the right. Positive, we move to the right. Okay? So negative, we went down. Positive to the right. Now I have my instructions. So I start at my y-intercept and I follow the slope instructions. I'm going 2 units down, 3 units to the right. So I count down 1, 2, and I move 3 units to the right. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to continue to do that pattern. 1, 2, 2 units down, and then 1, 2, 3, 3 units to the right. I cannot go anymore. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to connect my points using a straight edge. I'm going to go all the way to the ends of the graph paper when I draw my line. And I'm going to label my line with my equation. Y equals negative 2/3 x plus 5. Okay. Just pause this if you need to copy and draw your lines. I'm going to move forward to question number 3. Question number 3, last question. So I'm going to write y equals mx plus b underneath here. Don't have as much space here. That's okay. Make it work. Okay. So, first thing we're going to identify is the slope. The slope is the number that has x attached to it. So the slope of this line is 1/3. Because that number has x attached to it. The y-intercept of this line is a number that does not have an x attached to it, so the y-intercept is the constant 6. And that's our b, or beginning. Okay. Now, we're going to begin at the y-intercept of negative 6. That means the the coordinate is 0, negative 6. So I'm going to go, first I'm going to label my x and y axis on the graph. I'm going to go to the origin. I'm going to move 0 units left or right, so I stay put. And I'm going to move 6 units in the negative direction down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is my y-intercept. That's the beginning of my graph of my line. Highlight that. And now I'm going to write out my instructions. Again, the top number tells us if I'm moving up or down. If it's positive, I move up. If it's negative, I move down. The bottom number in the fraction, if it's positive, you move to the right. If it's negative, you move to the left. Okay? So we have positive 1. It's positive. I'm going to move up. Okay? So I would move 1 unit up. And then I have a positive 3 in the denominator. I'm going to move 3 units to the right. Okay. So from my beginning point of 0, negative 6, from my y-intercept, I'm going to move 1 unit up and 3 units to the right. 1 unit up and 1, 2, 3 units to the right. And I'm going to do that until I run out of room. 1 unit up, 3 units to the right. 1 unit up and 3 units to the right. I can't do that because I run out of room. So I'm just going to graph it. And then the last thing we do is label our line with the equation y equals 1/3 x minus 6. Okay. So that is how you graph a line when you're given a linear equation in slope-intercept form. Please try the rest of the problems on your own.